What is going on, everybody? Always an interesting and civil day when I make this video here today, updating my quarterback rankings. Okay, maybe not the most civil day, but it is a very fun day and a video I'm very looking forward to here today. Now, before we start diving into it, I do want to kind of set the board here and talk about what my tiers are for these quarterbacks. So I laid out these 6 quarterback tiers over my summer deep dive series. I think they hold up really well, and we're going to continue with these tiers for the foreseeable future. I like having kind of an established, this is what tier 3 is, this is what tier 5 is. So when I'm discussing quarterbacks and I mention a guy is in a certain tier, you know what I'm talking about here. So I do want to lay the board here a little bit. I'm not going to read it word for word. If you want to pause it and read it so we're all on the same page, that's great. But at the bottom, tier 6 are your backups, split into 2 categories, your kind of interesting prospects as well as your high-end veteran backups. Tier 5 are your fringe starters. Again, split into 2 categories where you have your sort of veteran bridge quarterbacks who are flirting with the top 32, and then you're very much like developmental young quarterbacks that aren't really all that good yet, but you're hoping they get there. Then tier 4, your fine category, again, split into 2 different groups. One being your sort of capped veterans, call it the old Andy Dalton line, where you know this guy's a starting caliber quarterback, but in your heart of hearts, you know you're very unlikely going to win a Super Bowl with that guy as your QB. And then you have your developing tier 4 quarterbacks where they're clearly starting caliber, but they're not consistent enough to be tier 3, but they're heading in the right direction. You feel good enough for where you're at. That they can get there. Then tier 3 are your good quarterbacks, basically guys that you probably want to pay because you don't know what's behind door number 2, if you will. Guys that can get the most out of a great team that if everything goes perfect, you might have a chance at a Super Bowl, but you know what you're kind of signing up for with these guys for the most part, at least at their current level of play. There is a mishmash of quarterbacks that do have potential to develop more consistency or establish more of a track record to get up into tier 2. It's not that they're locked in necessarily in tier 3. I want to make that clear. Then at tier 2, you have the great tier, guys that can elevate a team, maybe not quite as consistently as your tier 1 quarterbacks, but guys that you expect in a 10-year window will eventually go on a run and win a Super Bowl. And then you've got your tier 1 guys, the elite quarterbacks, guys that as long as the team isn't genuinely terrible, you expect to have you in the playoffs. And then every given Sunday when you have a quarterback of this caliber, you think you've got at least a decent enough chance to win because that quarterback can put the team on his back. But now that we're all on the same page, let's go ahead and get into it. We are ranking 54 quarterbacks. Not going to spend forever on all of these guys, but I did want to bring in all of the good backups and interesting backups into this conversation. And with the first guy we're going to talk about here today, he ended up making the list because he's a starter in the NFL right now, but I actually didn't think he fit the criteria for any of those top 6 tiers. Even at the bottom there, I don't consider him a good backup quarterback, and I don't consider him an interesting prospect type. So this would be the tier 7 kind of replacement level backup type of quarterback, and that's DeShaun Watson. I know this sounds like I'm trying to come out the gate with a hot take, but he has just been so genuinely bad. And I could probably find other quarterbacks that I'd rather have as a backup than DeShaun Watson right now. To me, he looks like he's coming out completely unprepared, like he doesn't know the offense. He's not throwing on time. He takes the snap. He stares at the rush. He's taking a million sacks, and he doesn't have the athleticism that I think he once had to elude a lot of these sacks in the ways that he used to in Houston. His accuracy's bad. His arm talent isn't anything special. If you have one positive thing on him, it's that he's not really throwing picks. His 3 picks have been pretty fluky plays with batted balls and dropped balls leading to interceptions, but he's not throwing picks because he's not throwing the football. He's just holding it and taking sacks. It's destroying the entire team. This is what it would look like if your starter went down and you didn't have a good backup in place to replace that guy. That is the level of quarterback DeShaun Watson is playing at, and I can't believe no one in that building has been able to swallow their pride, whoever is ultimately has to make this decision, to just bench DeShaun Watson. Hell, I would cut him, get him out of the building, cut ties. This has been a disaster. But with that, we're going to kind of rip through all of the backup quarterbacks here. I think I would lose you guys if I dove into all the backup quarterbacks in the NFL. But in that sort of capped, capable backup grouping here in Tier 6, I have Carson Wentz, Tyler Huntley, Jake Browning, Aiden O'Connell, who I do think showed a nice floor as a rookie last year, but a guy that just does not have the traits to really ascend beyond this level, in my opinion. He might be starting this week for the Raiders. I just don't have high hopes that he can become a starter someday. Taylor Heineke, Tyrod Taylor, Jimmy Garoppolo in this tier, though. I think if he were to take the field for the Rams and Sean McVay, I think he might be up into that Tier 5 fringe starter. I think he would actually play pretty well back in that kind of play-action-heavy Shanahan system. But based on what he did for the Raiders last year, have to consider him a backup. And then Jameis Winston, who I do think would be above DeShaun Watson if the Browns could wake up. More volatile. Well, I can't say more volatile than DeShaun Watson because Watson's just bad. But you would get some good games from Jameis and some bad games from Jameis. But at least the high ends would be putting you in a position to win some games. But then you have your interesting backups, guys that probably aren't better than a lot of the guys we just listed. And by the way, I'm not putting number rankings into these split tiers. I'm going to trust you guys to understand it's more of a nuanced conversation from QBs 20 to 35, if you will. We will have number rankings inside the top 20, but the players here are ranked within tiers. So I think the guys on the left are better than the guys on the right, if ever so slightly. But I've got Davis Mills. Was impressed by what he did in the preseason. Still young, good arm. Maybe could climb up to being kind of a fringe starter type of dude someday. Hendon Hooker was a third-round pick for the Lions. Hasn't really played yet, but because of the draft capital, some of the running ability, I will put him here, but more towards the bottom. I was not a big Hendon Hooker guy coming out of that Tennessee, weird offense. Then Sam Howell. He's a gunslinger. He can make some throws, but man, is there a lot of bad on his film as well, bailing out of clean pockets, some accuracy issues, a lot of work for Seattle to do on him. Spencer Rattler making this list. He's going to be making his start for New Orleans, so we'll get some more information on him soon. But definitely an interesting rookie draft pick for the Saints. Excited to see what he can do. I put Kenny Pickett in this group. I do think the Steelers did him dirty in the sense that I don't think he's just a garbage man quarterback. He's a limited player for sure. But I actually think if he had to play for the Eagles, he would actually play pretty well and could at least become a top 32 quarterback in the league at some point. Then Malik Willis, so impressed by what he did for the Packers in those two starts, actually making some throws from the pocket, but also, of course, showing off his uber athletic rushing ability that led to him being in the top 2 of mock drafts at a point in time. That was always pretty crazy, but he does have some traits, and I've been impressed by his development to this point. And Green Bay is pretty good at that whole developing quarterbacks thing. Still going to lump Trey Lance in there, right next to Zach Wilson. I mean, just seeing the dysfunction of the Jets and seeing some of these other quarterbacks bouncing back, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, is it that crazy to believe that Zach Wilson at 25 years old could still level out and have a decent NFL career? I don't think it's crazy at all. He does have the traits. And then Bryce Young, similar conversation there. For what it's worth, he stepped in garbage time against Chicago last week. Probably made the best throw of his career. I do think we'll see Bryce Young again this year, and that'll be kind of a last shot at seeing basically if Carolina wants to go forward with him next year or not, as they continue to kind of figure out what works for that offense. Now, before we go to the next tier here, this is the best time of the year for sports. We obviously have NFL, but NBA, NHL starting right up, or maybe you're a music lover and you want to go to concerts. And I got to let you know, SeatGeek is the #1 ticketing app out there to help you secure the best tickets at the best price. SeatGeek is always the first place I go when I'm looking for tickets because they have the best user interface. They color code every seat so you know where the best values are. Just look for the green dots so you know you're getting the best bang for your buck. They're also really good about having images of what your seats are actually going to look like when you get there. I love that. And speaking from years of experience, SeatGeek is also the best app in terms of getting your tickets quickly, conveniently, and right there on the SeatGeek app. instead of having to jump through different loops of email chains and logins with other apps to load up your seats before you get to the gate. But hold on, there's even more. I've been happily representing SeatGeek for over 5 years, so many of you have probably used my promo code in the past to buy tickets on SeatGeek. Well, they've hooked us up with a new code, so fans of the channel can take advantage of the discount code again. This time around, it is code TFG10 at checkouts. Whether you're an existing customer or a new one, they will give you 10% off your next purchase, and you'll support my channel in the process. This is a no-brainer. The next time you're going to an event, just remember code TFG10 at checkout on SeatGeek. And I hope you have a great time. Tier 5, we'll start with the veteran capped starters here, which the bottom of this tier would be 36th. So we're getting closer to the sort of top 32 quarterbacks in the league here. But not a lot of time needs to be spent here. Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton, and Jacoby Brissett. Guys right on the fringe of top 32 quarterbacks that are doing their best to help their teams win games, but obviously have their limitations at their age and with their traits. But then the more interesting portion of Tier 5, your sort of developing prospects, if you will, trying to order these guys is an absolute crapshoot. So, I wouldn't look too far into the actual ordering of these guys. The reality is we just need more sample size. We need to learn more about these guys before we have strong opinions about it. But I did take my best crack at it. I do still have Justin Fields at the very bottom of this. I do feel good about putting him at the bottom because I do feel like he's holding on to this idea that he's ever going to get better by a thread. I had kind of written that concept off in Chicago because the lack of development, the inability to speed up his processor, to stop making silly mistakes with the ball, the poor pocket presence on constant display, that just never really improved in Chicago. But in the first few weeks in Pittsburgh, a much better organization, you started to see some very incremental growth. But the last 2 weeks, some regression back to old Justin Fields. So at this point in time, he's probably going to start here week 6, but if he plays bad again, they're probably going to go to Russ. Again, holding on to this concept that he's going to be anything better than a fun, fringe starting caliber guy, frankly, down there with guys like Dalton and Minshew, even if Fields is younger than those guys. It's not that Fields just genuinely sucks. His running ability, his ability to throw a nice ball a few times a game does give him a decent enough floor, but the lack of development has clearly been concerning. Then Will Levis, talk about lack of development as well. Now, he doesn't quite have the sample size of a Justin Fields, and he has had to play behind a very garbage offensive line in Tennessee. Also hasn't played too much this year. He's been beat up. He's already had a bye week in there. The traits from Will Levis are insane, and when things are on, it looks so good. He actually does go through his progressions. He can throw an amazing ball over the middle. I love him in play action. There is actually serious upside with Will Levis, but he's got to prove that he's not Jameis Winston, right? These turnovers every single week hurting his team's chance to win. You just can't have that. There's no way around it. So if he can clean that stuff up, the play-to-play stuff is actually pretty solid from Will Levis. So I still kind of believe, but we're running out of time for him to prove that he's not just Jameis Winston, right? Then I got J.J. McCarthy in here, that kind of ball of clay. Time is only going to tell on him, but he was a good prospect that went to a good spot. Michael Penix, likewise. I do think putting him ahead of McCarthy for now is fair. I mean, he's 3 years older. Much more productive college career. Hell, was drafted ahead of McCarthy to the surprise of some people. Excited to see Penix someday, though. The dude's got a cannon. Then Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix, the last couple of weeks, has been much more of what you expected from him coming out of Oregon, taking much better care of the football, getting out of sacks, making some plays with his feet, being a pretty high-floor rookie quarterback. First couple weeks were extremely ugly. I think it was an adjustment period for him. And while he really doesn't have the physical traits, at least in terms of arm talent, as anybody in this tier, that doesn't mean guys can't get better from the mental side of things with the position. So I do still think Bo Nix is developing. To me, it's probably more of a question of, does he stop at tier 4 or does he develop all the way up into tier 3? We'll find out in time. Then I've got Anthony Richardson, just off the traits alone, his youth, I would still take the gamble on him over these other guys, but it has not been a good start. A lot of turnovers have stacked up for him, which you hate to see. The accuracy problems especially, though, have got to get cleaned up. There's no way around it. He is the least accurate starter in the NFL right now. The film backs it up, and any metric you want to look at backs it up. When he lets go of the football, you just don't know if it's going to hit its target. That's priority number one, is fixing that. And then Drake May. Making his start this weekend. We will get more information on Drake May, but based on basically how I felt about him as a prospect, which was very, very highly, that's all the information I can go off right now, and I would take that profile versus all of the guys we just talked about. That said, I am terrified that my Drake May take as QB2 in this draft is going to age terribly. It's already not off to a great start with how great Jaden Daniels is. Not that that was unpopular for people to have May as QB2. Most people did. But the fact of him playing behind this Patriots offensive line, throwing to Kendrick Bourne and Jalen Polk with a play caller that I think has proven nothing to this point, it just really scares me that this is going to be a Bryce Young situation or a situation like all of these quarterbacks that have been broken early in their career. I do think you can ruin a guy's confidence, force him into having bad pocket presence by not trusting that protection, and just spiraling. So I'm scared of it. I hope that's not the case. Excited to reevaluate this, though, when we do this list again in like 2 or 3 months. But now we climb up into Tier 4. We'll start with the capped veterans here, and I will put Russell Wilson at the bottom of this tier. While he had a falling out in Denver, his final season in Denver wasn't all bad, and I don't think he was a great fit with Sean Payton's offense. Wouldn't be surprised if he takes that job back in Pittsburgh fairly soon and plays all right. Plays something like a top 25 quarterback, which is about where we have him right now, which isn't saying much. But I don't know that everybody talks about Russ that way anymore. Then we have Daniel Jones next. For what it's worth, he's coming off his best game since that Vikings playoff game that got him that contract extension. Really liked what I saw from him in Seattle. This is the first time that he has really played behind an actual real offensive line. He has someone to throw to in Malik Neighbors. And even in that Seahawks game that we just saw last week as of this video, Malik Neighbors wasn't playing. So I feel like I've become a bit of a Daniel Jones apologist just because his situation has been so bad. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but could he surprise and settle in as something more like the 20th best quarterback in the league and actually win some games with the Giants on this contract? Yeah, maybe. But that's about the best I can say about Daniel Jones at this point in time. Then Derek Carr. You guys aren't here to listen to me talk about Derek Carr. He is the most bland, timid, boring, average quarterback in the league. Then we have the developing portion of Tier 4. Again, guys that don't quite have the established record to be good enough for me to say they're Tier 3 at this point in time, but maybe heading in that direction. 2 guys here for me, Caleb Williams and Sam Darnold. So in the case of Caleb, I definitely think he'll get there. He has built week by week by week, and maybe 2 weeks from now, this is going to look bad, and he's going to start passing up some of these guys in Tier 3. Not quite ready to go there yet, but this puts him at the 22nd best quarterback in the league 5 weeks into his career. Still very respectable. I'm a huge Caleb fan, even if some Bears fans would take the optimistic projections approach and say I would rather have Caleb than 10 quarterbacks, 15 quarterbacks ahead of where I'm ranking Caleb here. Yes, I agree. If I'm picking these guys in a draft, yes, give me Caleb, but that's not what we're doing. We're ranking where these guys are at right now. And then Sam Darnold, funny to put him after he's been in the league for 5 years, 6 years. Funny to put him in the developing category, but he is finally in a situation where he can develop. And I do take a bit of a different perspective on him in the sense that he's playing the best ball he has. He's still only 27 years old. He's only the same age as Joe Burrow. Now, you could argue the last couple of weeks, games against the Vikings and the Packers, he's shown some scary flashes of the old Sam Darnold with the turnovers. So you want to see him course correct and look more like the first 4 weeks of Sam Darnold that we saw. But I think we are seeing a guy that his process is very sound. He throws a gorgeous ball. He's got great pocket presence, great athleticism to elude sacks. There's a lot of upside with Sam Darnold. We knew that when he came out, but the Vikings have finally been able to tap into that. But now let's climb up into tier 3, and this is where I will start putting those number rankings on these guys. And I might ruffle some Eagles fans' feathers on this one, but I've got Jalen Hurts down here as the 20th best quarterback in the NFL. Now, fortunately for me, I just made a full film breakdown on Jalen Hurts to give you my full thoughts on how Jalen Hurts is playing and really how much he's really struggling right now. I mean, the pocket presence is a disaster, and that's always been bad on him. But you're seeing his decision-making in more of a pro-style offense is not up to speed. He's putting the ball in harm's way more than he ever has, really regressing, frankly, from the moment they paid him in Philadelphia. Now, I still think getting A.J. Brown back, getting Lane Johnson back, he's going to settle back in and be a good quarterback. And the Eagles will still have a chance because their team is, quite frankly, near perfect from a roster construction standpoint. But is Jalen Hurts getting the most out of those guys? Absolutely not. Not to mention, he just looks slower, and the running ability was such a big part of his game. It just hasn't been able to make that impact in that way. But then 19th, I have Tua. Tua has become one of the hardest quarterbacks to rank because it's a double-edged sword. I think he is someone that absolutely benefits from the system catering to his skill set, right? Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, that very unique offense that Mike McDaniel has crafted around Tua. But on the flip side, they also can't just plug anyone in there. Tua does have a very unique ability to get the ball out quickly. And what that does is not only put Hill and Waddle in the best position to succeed, but it protects the team from having a garbage offensive line, which they do. That ability to make very, very quick decisions, we're talking about split-second decisions and throw the ball with anticipation and accuracy, is a very impressive trait that Tua has. So it is a tough conversation with Tua because when they can have that game script, when those kind of schemed plays within the specific system structure of that Dolphins offense, when everything's working, Tua's like a top 7 quarterback maybe. Like, it is really hard to defend that. But there's so many times where defenses are able to take away those immediate now throws from Tua, and he forces them sometimes when defenses do take them away because he trusts it. You get some ugly moments that way. But B, the Dolphins have had a complete and utter inability to pivot, I think, because of Tua's lack of skill sets. He's not someone I trust consistently in the drop back passing game, really beyond like 2.2 seconds. And he's probably more in the 20s in that way. So a tough player to rank. I do still respect Tua. I understand why the Dolphins paid him, but a big reason I was worried about them paying him was his concussion history. So again, it's a difficult, nuanced conversation with Tua, but he comes in 19th for me. But then Kirk Cousins at 18, another guy that's kind of tough to place right now. I had him more, I think, 14, 15 coming into the year. I actually think he's playing better, getting more comfortable with the Achilles, the velocity, even some of the movement within the pocket. It looks fine. He's never been a great athlete. He might be a little bit slower now, but I don't think it's really going to hamper him. The main difference has been just going from Minnesota to Atlanta. I think they've had a lot to figure out. They've started to get Drake London going. So, I think Kirk is Kirk. I think he's been what Atlanta paid him to be. It's just a lot of other quarterbacks either playing really well right now or that have played at a higher level in years past that are more trending down. So he's a tough guy to place right now. 18 sounds rough, but I do think Kirk is a good quarterback. Then I have Geno Smith at 17. Not the best week to do this for Geno Smith. Not his best night against the 49ers. But the first 5 weeks of the season, Geno Smith has been incredible. I'm just looking for a little bit more of that consistency from him. But, man, his pocket management, his deep ball, even some of the processing, the decision-making is very good from him. Kind of the same deal with Kirk, where if you just asked me off the bat, is Geno Smith a top 16 quarterback in the league? I'd probably say yes, but then I start looking at this and I'm like, well, there's this guy and this guy and this guy. He falls just short of it. But I do like Geno and don't think he's really Seattle's problem. right now. But then Jordan Love at 16. I mean, man, this is why we do tiers, right? It's just very tough to sort these guys. They all have different resumes, different projections, have all played at different levels this season. Jordan Love has not had a good start to his 2024 season. And even last year, the first half of his first year as a starter was not great. The second half, he was probably a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, whatever metric or film you want to look at. He was insane. He got the highest paid quarterback at the time based on the second half of last year, and that alone, it was that good. And then you come into this year, kind of excited to see what the next stage of this is going to look like. And it's just been literally all over the place. There has been some good in there for sure, but it's been way overshadowed by ugly mistakes. The interception against the Rams was a memeable moment that is not going to bode well for Jordan Love's public opinion for sure. He's about to get sacked in the end zone and does what Will Levis does and just flips it to the other team for a pick 6. Those boneheaded interceptions haven't really been there for Jordan Love. It's really that and the one in a big moment at the end of that 49ers playoff game. But if you watched every drop back from him last year, his interceptions are more like pushing aggressive looks. You can see the process, but he shouldn't have thrown it because it wasn't there, that type of stuff. You can live with those, but he does have to clean up the stupid mistakes. And I think he will. But the main thing I'm worried about with Jordan Love that I said coming into the year and has surfaced as a problem for him this year is the accuracy. Outside of Anthony Richardson, I think you can make a case that Jordan Love is the second least accurate quarterback in the NFL, at least from the perspective that I take, that accuracy is not about can you throw dimes. It is about do you consistently hit your target? And Jordan Love does not. When he lets go of the football, there's a better chance than pretty much any starter in the league that ball is going to land at his ankles, that it's going to be a little bit behind the guy, that the receiver has to elevate for it. And I just need to see that improve with Jordan Love. I think he throws fadeaways unnecessarily. I would love to see him step into his throws more consistently. It's hard to know how much the knee has been impacting him the last couple of weeks, so maybe you can take an optimistic approach with that it can get better for that reason. But if he can just clean up the accuracy a little bit, as he did in the second half of last season, you can definitely talk about Jordan Love getting back into the top 10 and even into like tier 2, because I think he played like a tier 2 quarterback for the second half of last season. But definitely a volatile, sloppy start to his season, and he's dropped down these ranks just a little bit. And then at number 15, his predecessor, Aaron Rodgers, we're kind of starting to feel out what he's capable of at this age. And I think he's getting a little bit too much crap for a lot of the Jets' struggles. And this is, of course, a very nuanced conversation because there's the perspective of what is Aaron Rodgers playing like as a quarterback in a vacuum. And then there's the perspective of, well, how much of the Jets' offensive struggles on a macro scale are his fault? Having a Nathaniel Hackett as your offensive coordinator, having Allen Lazard as your wide receiver 2, having this offense that is all about what he wants to do, making checks at the line of scrimmage and throwing all these chemistry timing throws to his wide receivers like a Mike Williams that's not ready for it. Very difficult to parse those things. I do still think Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback, is still a good quarterback and frankly getting a little bit too much hate. He still has some mobility. He still has elite pocket presence. He's still able to make throws on the run. He still has extremely high IQ to pick apart zone coverages, to throw with anticipation. He's had some very good moments within the season. Now, if you want to take all the other stuff and say that's a part of who Aaron is as a quarterback, and for that reason, he's more of the 22nd best quarterback in the league because it comes with all this other baggage, I actually understand that argument. But I have seen a lot of people saying he can't play anymore. He's washed up. He just sucks. And I'm like, okay, he's not top 10, which I hoped he might have been coming into the year. I do think his age shows in, yes, he is less mobile than he used to be. I think his accuracy isn't what it used to be as his arm talent has deteriorated because he's a guy that doesn't always throw with the best mechanics. So yes, that stuff all plays into the picture, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers just sucks either. 15th feels like a pretty good spot for Aaron at this point in time. But then at 14, Trevor Lawrence. A steep fall for Trevor, who I had as a top 10 quarterback heading into the season. I was willing to excuse away a lot of the inconsistent moments last year, those near completions towards the sideline at the boundary, the injury in the second half of the year, the complete lack of a running game that the Jags had. I was very willing to do what the Jags did and say, well, 2022, things were much better all around him. He was healthy. He played easily like a top 10 quarterback. The trajectory is pointing up on him. They paid him big money. I ranked him top 10 heading into the year. But to me, with Trevor, it just all comes back to the inconsistency, both in his processing, his accuracy, and his pocket management, his pocket presence. And if you go down the board, there are times where he makes great reads. There are times where he makes incredible throws with his awesome arm. There are times where he will elude the rush and show off how athletic he is. But doing it repeatably, time in, time out, has been an issue for Trevor Lawrence, and even into this season, it has been an issue. Fortunately, he is coming off his best game of the season by far in his first win of the season against the Colts. When we revisit this video in 2 months, towards the end of the season, I hope that Trevor gets his mojo back, the Jags figure some things out, and we can get back to a point where we're talking about Trevor as a tier 2 quarterback trending upwards. But unfortunately, it just has gone in the opposite direction, and he is not consistent enough for me to say he is a tier 2 quarterback at this point in time, even if his traits would tell you that's where he should be. And then again, all of these guys coming from different trajectories, different paths. Jayden Daniels at number 13. And based on how he's playing this season, Jayden has been top 8. It's just a matter of how much do you wait on the sample size and how quickly are you to react to stuff like this. But I have just been so blown away by what we've seen from Jayden Daniels. And I was admittedly lower on Jayden Daniels. He was my QB3 in this draft. I said that Washington was going to regret not taking Drake May. And I thought Jayden would be slower out the gate, certainly. I didn't think his ceiling was this as a rookie quarterback in the first 6 weeks of his career. And where he's really blown me away is, number one, the ability to attack the middle of the field, which was my biggest concern on him coming out of LSU. He has checked that box immediately. Seems very much the old case of what was he asked to do versus what can he do. Cliff's offense does ask him to attack the middle of the field, and he's doing it not just well, he's doing it exceptionally well. But beyond that, his ability to beat the blitz as a rookie quarterback, I mean, this is the thing in the NFL, right? Rookies can't handle the blitz. And outside of that Cardinals team, teams have tried blitzing him. But he has had every single answer, and he's beating it in so many different ways. He knows where his quick outlets are. He's attacking the sideline. He's throwing slants against the blitz, finding those openings when he needs to. He's pushing the ball vertically against the blitz as well. That touchdown throw to Diami Brown last week, they blitz him. He knows he's going to get hit. He drops a dime down the field against the blitz, and he's able to beat the blitz with his legs and his exceptional pocket presence that was on display at LSU. So I would have said coming in, those are two areas that I need to see more from Jayden Daniels on based on what we saw at LSU. He's checked those boxes. And then, of course, you're seeing the running ability, the deep ball accuracy, the pocket presence, all of his strengths at LSU have taken what is a good floor with the processing, the ability to beat the blitz, the areas that he's surprising me. And you're seeing those incredible traits raise the ceiling to something really special, where if he keeps playing at this level, he's not just going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. He might receive MVP votes. So for me, and how I do my process, to have Jayden Daniels as the 13th best quarterback in the NFL after 5 weeks is a tremendous amount of respect to what he's accomplishing and what we're seeing. That said, there will be some Commanders fans that say that's still too low. And you know what? Based on how he's playing, I'm not really going to sit here and argue you on that. It's just my process is a little bit slow to react on these guys. Then I've got Baker Mayfield at number 12. Just blown away by his continuation of high-end level play with the Bucs. Heading into the year, didn't exactly know how to take what happened last year, where the first 2/3 of the year were okay. I mean, he bounced back, looked good, looked solid maybe. But the last 6 weeks heading into the playoffs, he caught fire, was playing great. I didn't know where that was going to really settle heading into his second season with the Bucs. It didn't settle anywhere. He's actually raised the bar. He's more comfortable. Processing has gotten better. His pocket presence and ability to manage the rush and elude plays with his feet where he's actually been really good as a scramble this year, has gotten better. I would say he's even playing at a better level than he did in the last 6 weeks of last season. So this has been a steady climb for him, not some regression to the mean where we were overweighing the back half of last season compared to the first half. He did have one stinker game in there against the Broncos, but I think that was a trap game for the whole team. 5 out of 6 weeks for Baker, he's shown tremendous, dare I say, top 10 level quarterback play. And I'm very impressed to say that he is top 12 in my rankings here. And then number 11, Brock Purdy. Another one of these quarterbacks that I ranked a little lower heading into the year. I think I had him 16th, 17th or so. He's reached a new level, man. He's just... I said it audibly watching the Seahawks game, but it's how I felt about Brock Purdy all year long. He's just a slippery little motherfucker. He really is. And he's way more athletic than he gets credit for. He's strong. He has contact balance. And he has exceptional pocket presence. His ability to know where the rush is coming, to flow through traffic, to extend plays, it's a real problem. And I would say he's not even doing as good of a job as he did last year playing in structure within the confines of that Shanahan offense. Amazon Prime did a really good job breaking down why teams are running so much more man coverage against them without Christian McCaffrey and the threat of him out of the backfield getting matched up on linebackers. And teams have done a better job taking away those easy throws. I think that can get better because that was Purdy's magic in the first 20 starts of his career, was playing on time. Amazon also showed he's scrambled more times this season than he did all of last year. So this idea that his ability to extend plays and be this really exceptional playmaking quarterback is real, but I still think he's a guy that can play within the timing of this offense when it's there. There's still been a lot of those now throws off of play action within this offense. I think those will uptick as the offense hopefully gets more healthy for them. But Purdy's absolutely legit, man. He might have one of the weakest arms among starters in the league. And yes, there are some throws that are unavailable to Brock Purdy that might keep him out of the top tier or two. I do think he could get into tier 2 if he continues to climb. But yes, that is a limitation in his game. Those hole shots against cover 2, some of those deep outs, there are throws in the playbook that just aren't available to him. But he does so much other stuff that other quarterbacks aren't doing that I don't think it's fair to fully hold that against him. Then at number 10, Jared Goff. Right where I had him coming into the year, maintains that number 10 spot. Was a little bit rocky in the first couple of starts, but the last 2 weeks, I think he has really settled back in. I do think his comfort within this Lions offense, as long as they have that offensive line for him, his processing, his decision-making, his ability to attack the middle of the field with anticipation and accuracy, an underrated vertical ball thrower that has been on more of a display this year with someone like Jamison Williams. This was the number 1 overall pick once upon a time. He has traits, even if he's not an athlete, that can improvise against pressure. I continue to be impressed by Jared Goff. I've talked about how I've flirted with him as a tier 2 quarterback. Had he started this season stronger, if he had played like he had the last 2 weeks, all 5 weeks, because the Lions have had a bye, he might be pushing tier 2. But it is all factored in here, and he stays at number 10. Then at number 9, I've got Dak Prescott. With Dak, for me, it's really just a matter of how guys rise and fall around him. He is quite possibly the highest floor quarterback in the NFL. His pre- and post-snap processing, his accuracy, his ability to push the ball downfield, even when he doesn't have the best pocket presence, to launch a deep ball with anticipation, to get the ball out quickly, to read out these high lows and push the ball downfield when he needs to. He's just so impressive. He tries to play like Peyton Manning, and a lot of times he pulls it off. Now, he's not the best under pressure. He doesn't have the best pocket presence. He doesn't run as much as I think he could. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm necessarily to make these wow throws. But I do think this year, in a pretty high difficulty situation, it's really been him and CeeDee, who's not playing like CeeDee played last year, and not a whole lot of anything else against the world. And he's been Dak. He's been a good quarterback. But I do have Kyler Murray at number 8, still in this good tier. I thought about putting him in tier 2. He hasn't quite been consistent enough this season for me to do that. Maybe he can get there. But God, has it been so fun to see Kyler Murray playing like he did the last time he was healthy, when he had the Cardinals undefeated as an MVP candidate. And then everything fell off, right? The coaching, the roster talent, the Call of Duty jokes, the injury, it all piled on Kyler Murray, and public opinion shifted on him quickly to the point that I've spent the last 500 days or so saying he's the most underrated athlete in professional sports. And man, that's aged pretty well here. He has been fantastic. He had a little bit of a slump in there for sure. The Washington game, the Lions game, some missed throws popped up in that game, in those two games that held him back a little bit, but got his mojo back with an exceptional, an elite performance, really, against the San Francisco 49ers. And that's what's so crazy about Kyler, is when he's on, he gives you that chance to win every single week. There are more tier 1 elite performances from Kyler Murray than anybody in this tier 3 that we talked about. Now, he might lay more stinkers, though, than guys like Dak and Goff and Baker. So that has to be accounted for, too. But if he can establish more consistent high-end play as he continues to build a chemistry with Marvin Harrison, as the Cardinals continue to grow as a team, Kyler can prove to be a true consistent difference-making tier 2 type of quarterback. But he is going to round out that tier 3. Let's jump up to the great tier, where I do have Justin Herbert, and I don't even really have much to say about Herbert. The first 5 weeks of his season, he's coming off a bye week, have pretty much been a wash for me. It has been kind of as feared to a sense, in the fact that this Greg Roman offense just doesn't want to ask much of Justin Herbert. They want to run the ball. They want to play defense. They want him to avoid mistakes. He's done everything they've asked him to do. And he's done that battling through injuries without a lot of receivers to throw to. And he's been fine. I don't think Herbert has given you anything to really raise your stock on him. And I don't think you're really lowering stock on him either, even if his stats and his production haven't been anything special. I still have my reservations when it comes to his aggressiveness and his lack of creativity as a quarterback at times. But there's no denying he's a high-end processor with exceptional accuracy, great athleticism, and one of the best arms in the league. Still very much deserves to be in tier 2. But I do have Matthew Stafford at 6, and I still just don't think people realize just how high of a level Matthew Stafford has been playing at over the last 2 years. It started last year, where he missed a couple of games, and, the Rams ran for a gazillion touchdowns down in the red zone, and it took away from Stafford's final production on the season. So this isn't a guy that's going to finish as a top 10 fantasy quarterback, really be in the MVP conversations, though I think if he played those 2 games, if he didn't miss those games, he might have received some votes from the real film heads out there. I don't think it's a crazy take to say that last year Matthew Stafford's film was the best out of any quarterback in the regular season last year. Hell, our friend Caleb Williams made that point to Kay Adams in the preseason, calling him out as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And this year, that difficulty level for him has only gone up. He's been out there with 3 or 4 starting offensive linemen out the majority of the season. No Puka, no Cooper. Their tight end, Tyler Higbee's been gone. It has been Matthew Stafford against the world, and their defense has been very mid. Stafford has had to do everything for this team, and he's put the Rams in position to win these games. They just haven't quite had the horses to finish against some tough opponents, games like the Lions and the Rams. But they did pull one off against the 49ers. And he is just out here battling, man, taking hits, making some of the most batshit crazy throws under pressure, changing arm angles. It's like the movie Wanted out here, where he's getting shot left and right, but he's curving bullets around the defense to complete some of these passes to keep his team in games. Just go watch that Lions game, and you will understand everything I'm saying about Matthew Stafford. That game was brought to the forefront because it was on prime time. It was the first Sunday night game of the season, but he's been doing that really for the last 20 games or so. So I will continue to defend Matthew Stafford, even if his production and the team wins don't quite have him here. But I do have him passed up by someone I had ranked below Stafford coming into the year, and that is CJ Stroud, who, I'll be honest, if we do this video 3 weeks from now, he might be in the elite tier. I continue to just be so blown away by CJ Stroud and the ability to play in structure, this sort of cerebral ability from him. It's incredible, but it's not necessarily a huge surprise. That's where he was so good at Ohio State, was playing on time within the pocket with incredible accuracy. So that being a strength of his game maybe was expected, but for him to be 20 games into his career, one of the smartest, most accurate quarterbacks in the league is a true testament to who he is as a quarterback and how he sees the field. But the fact that he has paired this with something that he did not do consistently at Ohio State, and that is have genuinely elite pocket presence and improvisational ability when the structure of the offense isn't there, and having that perfect balance of knowing when everything's okay, when he can just step up, throw that dig on time perfectly, and when he needs to get into that playmaking world, it has just been so spectacular. And the other thing that surprised me too is if you watch his Ohio State film, he actually missed a lot of throws on the run. I felt like in college, he actually showed that he didn't have this crazy arm talent to put the ball wherever he wants, whenever he wants. Like, go watch him against Notre Dame. He's rolling left and right and throwing the ball at guys' ankles. He's cleaned that up. And he genuinely has some of the best arm talent in the NFL. The smooth release, the ability to put the ball, again, wherever he wants, whenever he wants, whether it's in structure, out of structure. Hell, I don't even know if CJ Stroud's getting enough credit as an MVP candidate this year. So again, my process, I'm a little slower to raise these guys, but he, 20 games into his NFL career, is pushing the elite tier, is absolutely playing at the level of all these guys in the top tier right now. It's just a matter of when does he cross over that line to the fact that he's played enough games for me to put him in tier 1. I think he's close, maybe not quite there yet. But now tier 1, the elite tier, I do have Lamar Jackson back into this tier. You know, I didn't have him there coming into the year because of the Chiefs playoffs game where he was bad. He made a career-defining mistake in that game. I hope he gets an opportunity to overcome that and get a Super Bowl someday. But I just couldn't get that game out of my head, and I'd put him back into tier 2. But right out the gate this season, Lamar is back to playing at that MVP level like an elite quarterback. And even if he doesn't have the vertical accuracy that any of these elite quarterbacks do, and really a lot of the top 10 quarterbacks we've discussed, he more than makes up for it with his ridiculous pocket feel paired with his athleticism. He is just so impossible to defend. And you don't need me to tell you that, but this is something that I do think was a defining trait that he put on display last year as they went to more of a pro-style offense. He got into more of the drop-back passing game and really showed wherever you're rushing from, if you blitz him or you come around the corner or you stunt inside, he knows the exact answer of where to move with his feet. And it's not just the ability to sense pressure and find an escape lane and get out of the pocket where he can make insane throws. We know that. The touchdown throw to Likely last week against the Bengals was absurd. That's one part of pocket presence. But to have truly elite pocket presence as Lamar Jackson does, as all of these top 3 quarterbacks do, by the way, it's not just knowing when to get out of the pocket to extend plays, but it's knowing when there's room in the pocket after you've eluded pressure or manipulated it, when there's room to settle back in, keep your eyes downfield, and to beat you from the pocket. And Lamar will do that as well. So I'm back with Lamar into the elite tier. Then I've got Joe Burrow. God, it's so good to see Joe Burrow back healthy, playing at this level. It had been a minute, right? A run of injuries. He's had to kind of battle through these ugly starts, and that was the same this year. But over the last 2 weeks, there's, I don't think, a quarterback playing at a higher level than Joe Burrow, again, just over the last 2 weeks. And to me, if you want to debate who has the best processing and decision-making in the league, it's between Joe Burrow and Dak Prescott. But Burrow brings so much more to the table in terms of pocket presence, play extension, the ability to get his team a bucket when they need it compared to a Dak Prescott. And that is really the difference between a good quarterback and an elite quarterback, is the ability to put the team on their back when things aren't perfect. And right now, Joe Burrow is out here trying to will this Bengals team that might have the worst, second worst defense in the league behind the Panthers, to victory. And you might say, well, one of these games was against that Panthers defense. Yes, that's true. But he was absolutely absurd in that game. And he did it the next week again against the Ravens. So I was starting to get scared if Burrow was going to get healthy enough to maintain this level of play, where I think he earned this number 3 spot in 2022. It's been a minute since we've gotten this guy back, but he is here. And I will add, his ball velocity is actually better than it's ever been, I think. And this is something he's talked about. He's working on that spin rate. He wants to improve his accuracy, his ball velocity, which is something that can be done. Dak Prescott has done this over the years. Tom Brady did this over the years. There are things you can do in the offseason with training and in your mechanics to speed up your throwing power, and Joe Burrow has done that. His deep ball, I don't think, has ever looked as pretty and as good as it has right now in terms of ball velocity. So that's just another feather in his cap to do that, responding from a pretty bad wrist injury on his throwing hand. So he's locked in. I have no doubts Joe Burrow is an elite quarterback. And then number 2, Josh Allen. I think you can actually make an argument that Joe Burrow is the better passer than Josh Allen in terms of overall processing, decision-making, anticipation. But the stuff that Allen brings to the table in the running department with the most crazy improvisational skills you'll see, I think does just set him over Joe Burrow. But Allen's got to get back to the first 3 weeks where he was picking defenses apart. He looked sharper than he ever had in terms of making good decisions with the ball and quick decisions with the ball. That's fallen off a little bit the last 2 weeks. I'm pretty confident he can course correct and get back to some version of that guy. And I feel pretty good about Josh Allen as number 2. And then Mahomes at number 1. The Mahomes analysis is always pretty short. I actually would say this, though. This is, for the first time in like 2 years, the first time I haven't really felt the need to do tier 1A and tier 1B. Mahomes is the best quarterback in football, but is he playing a whole tier better than Allen, Burrow, and Lamar, even what CJ Stroud is playing like this year? No, he's actually made a decent amount of mistakes. There haven't been a lot of explosives in there. I am impressed by his ability to continue to nickel and dime defenses and play good situational football to help his team get to 5-0. Again, I'm still ranking him number 1, and if he had more weapons to open things up, I know he could do that. But I do think the gap is a little bit closer right now than it has been over the last couple of years, for whatever that's worth. But that is going to do it. You guys will have to let me know in the comments down below what you think of the quarterback rankings here heading into Week 7. Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Let me know all of it down below. Please do hit that like button on the way out. Make sure you subscribe for more tier makers. We're going to be doing wide receivers next. It'll be in a couple of weeks because I'll be in Mexico for a wedding next week. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you as always, and we'll see you later. Peace out.